Hi, we'd like to start with thanking you for giving us the opportunity to present our findings and research to you. Today we'll be focusing on the DC Social Innovation Project, which is DC's best kept secret for people who want to change the state of income inequality in the district. We're here to change that by identifying and spreading the word about the brand. So we'll be focusing on brand identity and awareness. All the research and findings for this plan will be presented by Stephen, Avril, Samantha, Brittany, and Jessica. What's unique about the DC Social Innovation Project is that you're willing to bet on potential of brilliant minds that flock to our nation's capital. High risk yields high rewards, and there is no doubt that the world of innovation is changing our society more rapidly than our federal government can. We believe that your investment in the budding social entrepreneurs is a courageous approach to community development that will transform the most underdeserved areas of DC from the inside out. By involving the community in these efforts, DC is able to focus on long-term applications that will create sustainability within the community. DC Social Innovation Project provides the training ground for passionate people with brilliant ideas for how to provide resources and opportunities to the underprivileged. DC is building a movement to alleviate poverty by empowering individuals to realize that everyone counts. Every idea counts, and that idea could turn into a project that would truly make a difference in people's lives in and outside the community. Although DC's focus is in the general DC area, it has recently decided to take a hyper-localized approach to influence the communities that need the most attention. With a more acute focus, DC is hoping that this will result in more specified measurements to provide and entice future donors and grantees to get more involved. While brand awareness is crucial for the growth of DC Social Innovation Project, the primary objective is engagement. Our strategic plan aims to engage and combine the efforts of the DC network to help community members and organizations secure resources that they may not have otherwise access to, in order to support the implementation of innovative programs that have the power to transform the local DC community.
As you can see, this map identifies the key stakeholders and how they view DC Social Innovation Project. All of the stakeholders view the organization positively, with many being advocates for the work that DC Social Innovation Project does. Those who volunteer with the organization view DC Social Innovation Project's work as enhancing their local communities. Grantees and prospective grantees also support the organization because they receive consultations and startup awards, and since there is no criteria for awards for prospective grantees, many of them will be drawn in. The Board of Directors also advocate for DC Social Innovation Project because they see that the organization's successes are directly related to their own successes. Community leaders are allies to the cause because they like to see improvement in communities and will be happy to observe positive growth. Finally, both donors and prospective donors will be in support of DC Social Innovation Project because the success of any project will increase community value and health. Here we observe some of the stakeholder perceptions and implications. The remainder of the stakeholders are covered in the slide immediately following this one. The employees or volunteers consist of young professionals who are looking to gain experience in their own careers. Their positions within the DC Social Innovation Project will not only provide a benefit to the organization, but will also benefit them individually. Grantees and prospective grantees will view their involvement with DC Social Innovation Project as more of a support position. Currently, DC Social Innovation Project lacks funding or extensive infrastructure to make grantees successful in a more significant way. It is also unclear what the participation requirements are for current grantees. In addition, it is unclear what support will be provided for those up-and-coming social innovators who would like to make an impact. As a result of these perceptions, all of the parties listed would ultimately offer more support for DC Social Innovation Project. The employees or volunteers will be personally motivated by their desires for personal growth, as well as the organization's overall mission. This will also mean that all of those involved will need to understand the organizational processes in order to work efficiently, as well as knowing the organization well enough to speak about it to external clients. Grantees and prospective grantees will be interested in how they can provide support to DC Social Innovation Product as it expands its brand. More opportunities for grantees and prospective grantees will be important as well. Community leaders who have been identified as allies will see that DC Social Innovation Project is taking a local and direct approach in order to positively impact the community in ways that do not include gentrification. Donors will also recognize the significance of DC Social Innovation Project's work, but they also may note that DC Social Innovation Project is not working on a large scale. Prospective donors could be confused by the grant process and may not want to become involved because of the confusion and a lack of metrics. The board of directors will see the dedication and successes that come from the organization's efforts, but they will also recognize inconsistencies and the difficulties of relying on informal networking for fundraising. The implications of all of these perceptions raise a very valid point. Why will donors or prospective donors want to contribute if DC social innovation projects processes are unclear? Since the organization is so small, it may place a larger workload on those involved, and it's important that no one gets tired out. DC Social Innovation Project can successfully retain donors and prospective donors while appealing to community leaders and the board of directors if they establish who the company is and what they do. The messages in this communication plan are centered around involvement and making a difference in the DC community. All of our stakeholders want to know that DC Social Innovation Project is committed to helping them help others. In doing so, the organization needs to find ways to confidently show all stakeholders involved what the organization is about, how they have helped the community in the past, and what their plans are to benefit the community in the future. In order to successfully expand DC Social Innovation Project's brand amongst volunteers, grantees, and prospective grantees, we suggest DC Social Innovation Project utilizing media such as Google Drive, the Internet, and social media such as Facebook, LinkedIn, and online blogs in order to give them access to the proper resources. Additionally, live meetings such as networking events and neighborhood association meetings are encouraged so that stakeholders can meet the individuals behind the organization. DC Social Innovation Project's positive image will attract prospective donors and retain current donors as long as those contributing monetarily understand how the organization is benefiting the community. Community leaders will also see the positive growth encouraged by DC Social Innovation Project's work and see the organization as a valuable resource in order to engage the general public, encouraging positive changes. By showing dedication to social change, balanced leadership, and creating and maintaining authentic partnerships with grantees and donors, the Board of Directors will continue to advocate for DC Social Innovation Project.
The DC Social Innovation Project's current situation within the nonprofit organization environment is typical. Although DCSIP has an amazing organization and partnerships with a very different concept from other nonprofits, the reality is that DCSIP is not fully tapped into its true potential. Internally, DCSIP may be at a disadvantage because of the measurement obstacles and the ability to translate projects into results, mostly due to limited resources such as time. Internal limitations directly relate to external positioning as well. DCSIP's most valuable currency is time and volunteer resources, which are both limited. This causes a severe disadvantage in comparison to the other nonprofits who have both time and volunteers in a more consistent basis, because their brands are larger and more well-known than the DC Social Innovation Project. Identifying internal and external positioning equally will encourage a solid understanding of how DCSIP can improve tactics to remedy both and determine where to focus efforts to maximize current capabilities of the organization. Research has shown that DCSIP has many strengths, its strongest being the leadership in place. The board members are knowledgeable, prominent community leaders who strongly advocate for the mission to promote change and are committed to assisting the success of the grantees. Because DCSIP specifically invests in people with the potential for community leadership, it already has a foundation for building a strong peer-to-peer network. The 80% success rate only bolsters the potential for a stronger peer-to-peer network. However, there are precarious weaknesses at DCSIP. With the limited personnel already being spread thin, the ability to set long-term goals for the organization takes a back seat, which might hinder the ability to identify impact at a community level ultimately. Because no standard operating communication procedure has been set up, organizational conflict could arise. This type of conflict would deter potential and future investors from committing to DCSIP, a huge risk for a nonprofit organization. And just like other nonprofits, DCSIP is vulnerable to market instability. Because charitable contributions are typically the first expense to be cut by consumers, DCSIP should cultivate productive alliances and partnerships with credible organizations. The organization is located in one of the wealthiest regions in the country, our nation's capital, and opportunities surround them, time willing. In addition to the partnerships, DCSIP needs to utilize every available opportunity to integrate the peer-to-peer network because millennials are truly passionate about social change.
There are many risks involved with the campaign of this measure. DCSIP is committed to local change, but is already plagued with a scarcity of resources and manpower. Because the organization is made up of esteemed volunteers who are already spread thin with multiple commitments, it would benefit greatly from a larger database of volunteers to call on. This is why we strongly advocate for the cultivation of a grantee network. More troops on the ground decreases one of the most prominent risks facing DCSIP. Increasing available resources and volunteers will prove twofold. Not only will it decrease the risk of organizational failure in the community because the organization is made up of a higher percentage of local residents, but a stronger brand awareness will inevitably follow. By utilizing past successful grantees, DCSIP can sidestep the prominent barrier of continuously calling on their personal and professional networks. While expanding its reach, DCSIP runs the risk of controversy. Although many grantee applications are received annually, they may not be on board with a hyper-localized approach to Ward 7 and 8. This could potentially have a negative impact on future grantee applications. But for the ones who are on board, long-term goals need to be detailed upfront to aid DCSIP's ability to measure impact in the community. By implementing measurable goals, DCSIP can take the data to collaborators to bolster morale and to investors to inspire contributions. The ability to prove successful social community change is one of the strongest barriers DCSIP needs to overcome in order to continue to be effective in the organization. Should DCSIP not effectively implement change, it risks losing credibility in the community as a viable network. No new businesses and no decrease in poverty will cause existing donors and potential donors to feel as though the hyper-localized approach is too much of a commitment for a resource-strapped organization. Without a consistent flow of donors, DCSIP is at severe risk of organizational failure. The overarching communication goal of this plan is to create a strong brand identity within the local community that translates into more sustainable and continuous fundraising support, as well as a higher volume of targeted grant applications. Primary and secondary research has allowed us to identify 4 main strategies that support the overall strategic goal. One of our main strategies is to cultivate a peer-to-peer network inclusive of past and future grantees. This peer-to-peer network is linked to increasing community value in Wards 7 and 8, specifically the Anacostia neighborhood, because DCSIP is implementing a hyper-localized approach to moving forward. In addition, DCSIP is committed to securing more sustainable funding. Therefore, by increasing monthly contributors from 12 to 25 by the end of the year, DCSIP can shift focus to the work it's doing rather than funding needed for the work. And because brand awareness in DC is a huge factor in the longevity of the brand, increasing click rates on communication platforms from 1% to 5% in 9 months is imperative.
One of the strategies we are particularly excited about is a brand awareness campaign to increase community values in Wards 7 and 8. We recommend Anacostia because it is well known as a struggling community in DC that's on the brink of development, which has thus far primarily focused on environmental projects such as cleaning up the Anacostia Park and river. DCSIP has already invested in a number of grantees who have demonstrated leadership as social entrepreneurs in this community. Publicizing a collective effort to address the needs of a severely misrepresented and underserved DC community would be an exciting way to inspire grant applications, connect with potential partners who can provide ongoing small business training, which DCSIP lacks the capacity to provide on their own, engage community leaders and past grantees, and generate media coverage. It's a new approach that's more visible and newsworthy than any one individual's effort. Focusing on one community at a time will also make it easier to measure impact and showcase that impact to both individual donors and larger foundations. In the American Sociological Review, Noak wrote that, quote, individuals, by pooling their resources in organizations, can achieve objectives that they would be unable to produce through their individual efforts, end quote. There's immense power in collective action. Collective action can elevate a cause from individual interest to group investment to public will. This happens when both individuals decide to work together to call for access to public goods, and organizations decide to work together to coordinate and pool resources for a common objective. DCSIP is the perfect connection between those individuals with passion and an organization with wonderful values. Collective action requires buy-in and commitment from individual followers in order to build power and turn individual agents of change into a united force for change. By fully embracing collective action and facilitating the implementation of innovative approaches to poverty alleviation, the collective impact of DCSIP's network is sure to pay dividends for your brand and your target communities, starting with Anacostia. Following our brand strategies, we've developed subsequent objectives to support each initiative. In an effort to set a higher standard for our grantee winners, DCSIP should communicate from the very beginning the type of commitment this entails after the program is officially completed. We advocate for the implementation of measurable goals for grantees in order to better communicate impact and success to the public and to donors. In addition, the pay-it-forward attitude is a lifetime commitment, so DCSIP will need to select grantees that support this mission, as well as the hyper-localized approach. Because the next grant cycle will focus exclusively on projects centered around Anacostia in Ward 8, DCSIP will need to benchmark the community in the beginning to defend the need for the hyper-localized approach, and also to demonstrate impact later. This will be a valuable foundation for soliciting engagement from community leaders through data. With the hyper-localized approach, DCSIP will need to start by focusing on sustainable projects to create momentum. By focusing on projects for Ward 8 that will produce an immediate impact, DCSIP can win over the skeptics and gain community trust. Listening to stakeholders is also a high priority because DCSIP is looking to create change in the community where it's needed most. Who better to share those high priority needs with you than the community members itself? By engaging the community on all fronts, brand awareness and participation at hosted community events is surely to follow.
Producing an executive action plan can be beneficial not only for individual basis, but also for the nonprofit organization. For example, it allows project managers or any member of a group to monitor their progress and take each task step by step, therefore allowing them to handle the project efficiently. The advantage of doing this allows management to execute a structured plan for the end goal they intend to achieve. Next, it provides a team with the appropriate foundations, therefore prioritizing the amount of time they spend on each task. This will then prevent any sidetracking that may occur. Furthermore, it creates a bond within a team, as each member is aware of their own individual role, as well as providing the necessary information to ensure the success of the project. Lastly, by taking the following steps within the first month will give the communication plan a successful start in gathering qualitative stories of grantees that received help from other grantees, establishing checkpoints for all grantees to move forward, developing a promotional video that will provide background on the organization, brand, and campaign, creating an information kit This information kit should include a fact sheet about the organization, a fact page, photos from DCSIP's efforts in the community, and opt articles about the organization. Once DCSIP has translated its strategic goals into initiatives, the next critical step is to consider the organization's actions holistically, to ensure that their scope, length, and required effort are realistic and appropriately sequenced. In essence, DCSIP will need to create a blueprint for change so that the leaders throughout the organization can see how their roles and their department's work connect to others. It is important for everyone to understand the big picture so that it is clear why certain initiatives and changes will start before others. Creating a blueprint for change is about setting the stage to build momentum for the progress to come. During this step, DCSIP should consider how the different initiatives would affect each other, as one phase of constructing change may need to be completed or a milestone reached before another step can be taken. Also, reflecting on how initiatives affect different parts of the organization. In most cases, implementation will put competing demands on operations and other internal functions such as promoting, fundraising, and conducting a yearly review. Involving the heads of these departments in the integration process will be helpful and may lead DCSIP to postpone or accelerate some initiatives, or if possible, to add resources. The process of coordinating and integrating efforts can be challenging because it requires making trade-offs, as an organization will determine that some actions must happen before others. But recognizing and making these trade-offs up front is critical to the successful implementation of DCSIP strategic plan. By engaging in a purposeful process of integration, DCSIP can ensure that their strategic frames critical choices.